everyone, and welcome to the College Prep Radio broadcast. My name is Ashley Hill, and I'm your host. I'm a college success coach who is so passionate about helping families and college-bound students to prepare for college successfully. And again, welcome to College Prep Radio. I'm so excited today. We're going to be continuing part 2 of the One College Prep Tip You Need to Know, Parents. And, this is so important to me because I'm sharing my personal story with you guys and kind of the experiences that I had. And so that's why I wanted to take time, to share this story. I think it's so important for your teen to be aware of, and parents for you to know and have insight on different ways that you can support your teen as they're preparing for college. Now, I welcome your thoughts, comments, opinions, ways that you're doing things that you can encourage other parents and other families. So give me a call at area code 347-857-4638. You can talk on the show. Again, that number is 347-857-4638. I encourage you to invite your fellow parents that you know in your neighborhood, invite your family members who have teens, invite them to listen in on the show, but also be aware that this show will be recorded and it will be on iTunes as well, just in case you missed any of the important information I'm going to be sharing today. So why am I talking about this? As I just mentioned, and if you heard part 1, I actually had experience in this area. I went through some things as a college student, and I feel it's very important to share to prevent anyone else from dealing with this particular area. And really it's 2 things. What I'm talking about is when students are heading off to college, obviously, in those teenage years, you're, starting from 7th, 8th grade on, you're trying to find yourself as a normal part of being a teenager. But when you get to college and you have low self-esteem, you don't really know who you are, you have self-identity issues, perhaps you're really not, you're not able to discern healthy relationships and friendships from toxic ones, that can really affect not only your college experience, but whether you'll graduate or not. And how do I know that? Because that happened to me. I was fortunate to be able to graduate from Kent State with my undergraduate, and I went on to get a graduate degree. But as I look back, I enjoyed the college experience, but when it came to relationships and just self-esteem, self-identity issues, I struggled with that. And so that's what I really want to share with you today. And, again, it's so important, parents, that you hear this because you need insight. That way, if you recognize any of these signs, if you sense, that maybe your teens are dealing with these issues, you can come around them and support them. And as you'll hear me say many, many times on this show, I love to talk about what I call the partnership model. And that's where not only do we have the team who's going to college, obviously they're the applicants, but we have to have the parents involved. Parental involvement is key because you're your child's first teacher. I mean, that's just a fact. Also, we have to have our community leaders and organizations as well. And lastly, as you know, the educators and the support staff, such as guidance counselors, speech pathologists, and the principals and different staff of that nature. So really, parents, what I'm pushing on this show and every show is that a key to every solution to the issues that I'm going to be discussing on these shows is to partner. Not to say, hey, they're a team, they can figure it out, but parents, for you to come alongside and really be a part. And in case you didn't know, this month, of course, is known for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but this month is also for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And this is kind of where it's a pathway. If your teens are heading to college and, let's say once they get there, if they're having, low self-esteem, they're not sure who they are, they're attaching themselves to toxic people, if that's not taken care of, if those issues aren't rectified, that can lead to a violent or abusive relationship. And if you, as you heard, I shared on the first show, that's what happened to me. And I'll give you a quick recap of the story. As I came from a military background, Christian home, 2-parent home, never saw my parents ever in an abusive manner, And so when I got to college, I was prepared academically. My grades were fine. I was ready for college in that aspect, but I wasn't ready for the emotional and psychological aspects of going to college, and that's the environment. And even though, yes, you're there to go to class, the times that you're not in class, you're in a new environment. You're with lots of people you don't know. Your horizons are broadened. You're just seeing and hearing so many different things. And so you really have to be solid in who you are. You have to really love yourself and respect and honor yourself enough that you're there for one purpose. And, yes, you want to make friends along the way, but you also want to keep a peaceful environment around you. So you don't want drama. You don't want unnecessary issues with other people. And you can control that. But the issue is, and what my issue was, is when you're not clear on that, when you go, you attach yourself to people because you're not paying attention. They may say something nice or something that caught your attention, but you're not taking time to look at the true character of that person. What are their activities? Are they just hanging out in the student union and skipping class? Are they doing drugs? Are they promiscuous? Or are they structured? Do they study? Are they dedicated to what they're doing? It can be on both sides. And so, parents, what I'm really stressing and what I learned from my experience is that it's so important to, one, know who you are, number one. Number two, respect yourself enough to take care of yourself. And if that means that, you don't go to this party because so-and-so is going to be there, maybe they're violent or be drinking or what have you, then you don't engage in those activities that are going to bring harm or further destruction on yourself. And so that's really, what happened with me. And thankfully, I did wake up. I kind of, came to with the support of God, number one. And my parents, my therapist and different friends rallied around me, and I finally gathered enough strength to cut off those toxic ties. And so that's how I'm able to boldly share my story today. I never thought I would be able to share this story because I was so ashamed. Because, people even who know now, they're like, oh, my goodness, you came from a great home. How did you end up in this? How did you end up dating this guy, who said you were worthless and stupid and ugly and fat and you never graduate? How in the world did you two end up together? And I tell them it was a lot of factors, but I wasn't paying attention. I heard nice things in the beginning. I saw nice things, but it really wasn't the reality of the matter. And so I'm so glad that, my friends, again, my parents, God, rallied around me and really supported me during that experience. And so now I can boldly, again, share this with you. And parents, really what I want you to be aware of is you may not know it right now. Your teens may be engaging in unhealthy relationships. They're saying they're going to the mall or going bowling, even at school. You don't know, parents. Some of you aren't aware, and I know that because the statistics are saying that. So many parents don't even know the warning signs, and there are many. But so many parents don't know the warning signs. And then, of course, so many teens don't know. That constant calling, constant texting, checking your phone, those are signs of abuse. Causing public humiliation, embarrassment, shame, that's abuse. And so really that's the focus of the show is I'm kind of shedding light, bringing exposure to this issue that we don't talk about because lives are at stake, parents. And that's what I want you to understand, that this can lead to, anorexia because of, again, if you're with someone who's telling you, negative things about yourself or lying to you about flaws that they perceive that you have, you could, if they say you're too fat, you could develop anorexia. You could develop anger issues. You can become depressed. That's what I was depressed for a long time, really throughout the duration of the dating relationship that I had with a really abusive person. I was depressed. And also suicide. And so that's why I really, ringing the alarm on the situation because parents, as your middle schoolers and high schoolers are going throughout their years, their K-12 years, it's important to set the foundation now. It's important, parents, to talk with your kids now because you don't want them to go on the campus and not be aware and not have a, healthy self-esteem and a healthy concept of relationships. And so that's what we're going to be getting into today. Before I start, I want to just mention the phone number again in case you're just joining me. It's 347-857-4638. Again, that's 347-857-4638. So, as I just mentioned, there are so many consequences. When you are in an unhealthy and toxic relationship, and as many of you may know or may not know, actually I have a graduate degree in public health, and the focus of that program was prevention. And so I'm of the mindset that we need to be proactive and not reactive, really to everything in life, but particularly in this issue. And parents, that's why I'm giving you the tools and I'm giving you the insights and the guidance today, so that if you are seeing any inkling, if you have any suspicion that your child may be in an unhealthy or toxic relationship and you don't feel informed or empowered enough, I'm here to inform you and empower you, parents, so that you can empower your teens to make the right decisions. Of course, now, your teens are in your home and you can kind of, you're in control, you're guiding, the decision making. But really the focus of this so that parents, you can learn, so that when your teens go off to college, they can be empowered and informed to, number one, see the signs and say, no, we're not going to do this. Take a stand and cut off those toxic ties. That's really what my goal is. So I want to get into some things, parents, that you can do. Number one, and this is a big one, I want to break it into several parts, is model what is appropriate in your home, in the family dynamics, in your relationships with your spouse or partner and your kids and others. Your teens, again, parents, you're your child's first teacher, right? Okay. When your teens are at home, do they see you fighting with your husband or wife, boyfriend, girlfriend? Do they see you talking negative about yourself? Do you have low self-esteem, parents? Do you constantly talk about your weight, your hair? You're not pretty enough. You're not thin enough. You don't have enough. Your physique is not how you would want it to be. You don't have enough money. You're not smart enough. You're not rich enough. Are you talking like this with your teens, parents? And now, mind you, I understand, we have rough days and we need to vent. But parents, you really have to be mindful, because your teens, whether they tell you or not, they're really listening. And if you're really critical of yourself, of them, other relatives, if you're constantly fighting and arguing and bickering, maybe there's violence in your home. I know we don't want to touch on that, but parents, you're the first model, so I have to start there. If you're engaging in violence, if you're an abuser yourself, again, if you're negative, if you're constantly critical, constantly judging others in a negative way, parents, that's where we have to start this conversation, because this is where your teens are learning this. And I even checked the statistics nationally in the U.S. A lot of teens think it's normal, to have constant fighting and violence and abuse in a relationship. That's why they're not picking up on the warning signs. That's why we have so many teens in unhealthy, abusive dating relationships, abusive friendships, because they think it's normal. And once you've normalized something, you're not going to see the issue. And so, parents, I want you to take a self-inventory and ask yourself, am I engaging in relationships around my teens inappropriately? And once you take stock, once you look at it, if that is you, parents, it's not too late. You can turn it around today. And I want to touch on another issue, conflict resolution. I mentioned about the arguing and the constant bickering and fighting. I didn't see that growing up. I know my parents had disagreements, but I didn't see that. And I'm so appreciative to my parents for not modeling that for me, because now that I'm an adult, I don't think that's acceptable, and it's not. In case you didn't know, it's not. And so, parents, it's not that you don't want your teens to think you'll never argue with your partner, husband, spouse, but that there's a way to resolve conflict. There's a way to do it, and there's a way not to do it. And so, parents, you have to constantly model, how do we resolve conflict? We both have to listen to each other. One person talks, one person listens. If there is something unclear, ask for, clarification, and then continue on the conversation calmly. If you can't, have a calm conversation, then you can take a quick separation or take a break for a second, but you come back and resolve. And so, parents, that's really key, because your teens need to learn this is how relationships are supposed to be, a healthy relationship. So that when they're, of course, at this age, they're wanting to date and have lots of friendships, they'll know that, hey, this is healthy. Okay, this just crossed the boundary. This is not healthy. And they can make better decisions because parents are able to watch you. Also, parents, some of you, maybe you don't love yourself. Maybe you don't honor and respect yourself. And, that can actually, that can become even more apparent in the eyes of your teens. They can see that in the way you talk, just in your mannerisms and your behavior. So you have to be very careful of how you're speaking. It needs to be positive, parents, that I can do this. I am smart enough. I am pretty enough. I can do this. I'm tall enough, or I'm strong enough, or whatever, your hang-up may be. And parents, in addition to that, is take time to build your teen self-esteem. And that's what's starting early. That's by telling your teen that, hey, you did a great job, you're doing well in school, you're so beautiful, you're so smart. Now, obviously, not just lavishing, all day, every day, but tell them, parents, take time out to tell them. You have to understand, teens are going through so much in the teenage years. It's a lot of stress. It's peer pressure, there's body issues, the hormones, are kind of, out of whack at that time. Anxiety about relationships, the influence of perhaps, the drugs and alcohol that comes into play. So parents, all the while, teens want to be adults at this age. So you have all these different dynamics going on. But parents, it's important that you be the stable force in your teen's life, and, you build them up. You encourage them. Also, parents, it's your job. It's your duty that if you see negative influences, to put a stop to it. Now, for example, I know we have social media, we have TV, we have just entertainment, our culture. That you have to look a certain way to be on TV. You have to dress a certain way. Your hair has to look a certain way, and such. The parents, it's your job to point that out and identify that to your teen that, hey, this is what society is saying, but this is not true. You don't have to look like this to be a model. You don't have to look like this. You don't have to be like this, to be in this certain area, whatever the issue is. But parents, that's your job. You have to call it out. And I just want to give a quick example. I was talking with a parent the other day, and, their teen is experiencing peer pressure to do drugs. And now, I don't have any children, but I'm waiting for this parent's response to how did you deal with this? Well, the parent, she did speak to her son, but she found him later on in the house doing drugs. Now, I'm waiting for the next response because, I'm thinking, wait a second, this, I'm sure that you put an end to this. And her response was, well, I know he's under a lot of pressure, and at least I know where he is when he does drugs. Parents, that is not acceptable in any shape, form, or fashion. No, and no again. Parents, you have to put your foot down. You have to protect your teens. They're still children. They're not 18. They're still children. And parents, you have to take a stand. And that, again, starts with you being a model, but also to remove those negative influences as much as you can. Obviously at school, when they're out, you can't control that. But in your home, it shouldn't be like that. There should be a standard in your home, and your teen should know your expectations and how you feel about it. Also, when you do put your foot down, parents, you're empowering your teens to make the right choices. And now, when we talk about teen dating abuse, I want to get into a few of the signs, because a lot of us are not recognizing them because we've normalized it so much in our society. Number one, if your teen is dating or has friendships, what have you, if they're constantly checking in on you, that's controlling. That's a sign of an abusive relationship. If they're constantly lying, if they don't allow your teen to talk to the opposite sex, if they threaten to hurt themselves if your teen leaves them, if they're, quick to lose their temper, if they don't mind embarrassing, your teens in public, if they force you, to have sexual intercourse, if they keep you away from your friends, that's isolation. If they constantly check your phone, or if they're constantly doing anything to scare your teens, that could be physical violence, that could be the threat, that could be using insults, that could be dangerous behavior. Parents, all the things I just mentioned are signs of an abusive relationship. I'm going to touch on a few again. If they're constantly checking their phone, if they're constantly lying in the relationship, if you're not allowed to talk to the opposite sex or your friends, if they threaten to hurt or kill themselves If your teen leaves them, if they're constantly getting angry very quickly, losing their temper, if they're embarrassing your teens in public, if they're forcing your teens to have sexual intercourse, those are all signs of abuse, parents. That's not comprehensive, but those are just a few of the main signs. And parents really have to pay attention to some things we don't talk about because there are no physical wounds. It's verbal, emotional abuse. And that's really what I dealt with more than anything. I was never hit. I was threatened by the person that I was with. And that was enough. That was enough to stop it right there. But my case was different because I was an adult already at that point. But parents, I just want you to be aware of what's going on. And, again, if any of those signs that I mentioned, if you're starting to see that in your teen's relationship, you need to speak up, put your foot down, and stand up for what's right, and tell your teens that, and this can only be possible when you have a relationship with your teens' parents. That includes constant communication, a bond. You guys hang out together, because then when you have something to tell your teens' parents, they're going to say, okay, I know my parents love me and they care about me. I'm going to listen. And now, parents, I'm not naive. I know some of your teens won't listen. But you can't give up, number one. And you have to keep on encouraging them. And as much as you can, parents, you can control the environment in your home. You can put your foot down about what you will not allow with your teens. And that's something that I want to touch on. As parents, you have a choice. I hear a lot of parents say, I don't know what to do. My teen is with this person. He or she is with so-and-so. And they're 14, parents, you have a choice. If you're providing for your child's welfare in any form, and even if not, just as a parent, parents, you have a right and a duty to do that. That's called protecting your teens. You do have an option. Yes, some teens may be very angry with you if they don't really understand, the ins and outs of a toxic or abusive relationship. But parents, I would rather my child be angry with me than for them to, earlier the consequences that I mentioned, for them to perhaps develop anorexia, anger issues, a mental health disorder, depression, or even suicide. And parents, think about this too. I want to bring this into the conversation. Some abusers, they don't even know that they're abusing because, again, we've normalized this so much in our society. A lot of, teens, they may not know that that's abuse. Some of them may not. And that's what I want to get to is we have to continue to push education. I was reading earlier today about some high schools and middle schools are now implementing curriculum for this as a part of the health education curriculum for the school, for the students. And I like it. I love it. I think it's a great idea. Parents, again, this is a part of the partnership. Obviously, the parents are stepping in and they're educating and doing, from their end. But now the school needs to get involved because, a lot of incidents do happen at school, around the lockers, during breaks and in between bells and what have you. And so I support schools, having that curriculum, having people who have gone through that to come back to the schools. I was even reading a mom, she was a teacher in her school district, and she's a health teacher, and she actually implemented this curriculum because her daughter was killed by her daughter's abuser. She was dating the guy. He was abusive. The daughter didn't pay attention to the warning signs. Mom wasn't really paying attention, and he killed her. Thankfully, he was convicted of murder, so he is locked up and put away. But still, because of not seeing these warning signs, eventually he snapped and he actually acted on the threats that he made. And so now she's giving back and she's providing this curriculum. And so parents in your school districts, I said that story to tell you this. In your school districts, you need to check and see. And even if your teen is not dealing with that, somebody's teen is. Somebody's teen is dealing, or child is dealing with a toxic or abusive relationship. It happens. It's happening a lot more than you realize, parents. Over 10% of high school girls are in an abusive relationship. That's a lot. That's huge. We've got to get that number down, and really the zero is what I would love to see. But, yes, parents, go to your school, talk to them, and say, hey, we need to implement something, for those teens who are in those relationships and provide resources for the parents. And so that, I said that because it's so important. We have to continue to educate. So now I want to get into two things that really helped me, that my parents did. Like I mentioned, I was an adult, so things were a bit different. The two things that you can do as well, parents, and that is they kept reminding me of my purpose, and they kept encouraging me to seek the truth. Now, parents, what does that mean, purpose? My parents kept reminding me, Ashley, you want to, major in biology, you want to have a career, in that field. Don't let anyone stop you or block you from that. That's your purpose. That's what you're passionate about. And so, yes, I had heard that over and over again, but one day my dad told me that he was in Afghanistan at the time, and he called me because I was living overseas with this person, and it jolted me. Immediately I woke up, and I said, wait a second, what am I doing here? I was getting ready to give up everything for this one person because, and this ties in the second part, I didn't know the truth. And parents, tell your teens this, something that will help them throughout the rest of their lives is when you can decipher what's true and what's not true, you're more apt to make the right decision. What is the truth of the situation? Ask your teen to ask themselves, what is true and what is not true about this relationship? Is this person constantly checking in on me? Are they trying to control me? Have they threatened to hit me? And now, parents, I'm of the belief one threat is enough. If that person has threatened one time, that is the end of that. I'm not going to give them another chance to act on it, as so many have done. And parents, you don't either. Set that expectation. But I'm so thankful that my parents, really encouraged me. Obviously, again, I was an adult, but parents, you can step in now and have these talks with your teens. It may be awkward. They may act like they're not listening, but parents do it anyway. And keep talking about it and keep putting exposure on this issue. And now what I did is I wanted my niece to know about my situation and how I overcame that challenge. And so I wrote a book called Celebrating the Journey, Rediscovering Me. And it's out now. It's on Amazon. Again, that's Celebrating the Journey, Rediscovering Me. And there I give much more details into my story. And really what's different about this book is I approach it as a way to educate. I focus on what my mentality was in the beginning and how I slowly, my mentality changed. And I had to realize finally one day that I'm worth more. And parents, that's what I really want your teens to know before they get on their college campus, is that they are worth more, that they have to honor themselves and follow their passions and stay away from toxic people, abusive relationships, and the such. And so I encourage you, get that gift for your teens, get it for your other teen relatives and your families. I think they're really be inspired by it. And also, parents, it can help you open up dialogue with your teens. You guys can read it together. So, as we're nearing the end of another episode, I just want to say again, I'm really appreciative of everyone that listened in today. Thank you so much for your support. Ways to get in contact with me. Okay, so I have a website. That's www.collegeprepready.com. Again, that's www.collegeprepready.com. And there at the top, I have a free gift for you parents on the 5 major roadblocks that you need to overcome to help your teens to be successful in their college prep process. I encourage you to get that free gift. Also at the bottom of the homepage is my brand new program for your teens, parents, is the Student Executive Academy. And I created that academy to help your students, parents, go through the process smoothly to college. Also, I'm on Twitter. That's twitter.com/prep, the word for SOR college. I'm on Facebook. That's prep, the number 4 college. I have a page there. Also, feel free to email me. That's info@collegeprepready.com. Again, I'm so excited. Next week, we're going to have Angela Schaefer talking about her new book, and parents, what you need to know about that. Again, thank you so much for listening in, and I'll talk to you next week.